Hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. My name is Brandon, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Sue Moore, Chairman of Liberty Scorecard. Well, Sue, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon. I always love talking to you. So thanks for having me.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, Sue, for those who don't know, what is Liberty Scorecard?
Well, Liberty Scorecard is actually an organization that we believe it or not, we actually read all the bills in the Colorado Legislature as they're introduced. So this year they had 705 of them. This is a huge year, a lot of work. But so we read bills as they're coming out. We apply our principles of free markets, individual rights, and limited government. And we have a whole spreadsheet that we use and questions that we ask. And there's a group of, anywhere between 8 and 12 people might be on a call, sometimes fewer, sometimes more, but people throughout the state who are really interested in what's going on in the legislature. So as we're reading bills, we're applying our principles, and then every Sunday, usually once a week, sometimes twice, depending on the volume, we'll have a Zoom meeting and we'll discuss the bills. We'll talk about our principles and we'll do some research. We'll have a robust conversation about whether or not we want to support or oppose a bill based on our principles. And after that, we enter all these votes, or excuse me, we enter our positions. We send every Monday, I send out an email to all the legislators telling them how we voted on, or the position that we've taken on each bill. And then as they go to their committee meetings or go to their floor meetings where they vote on these bills, they know where we stand. They know what we think. We have a little bit of explanation on why we applied certain principles and what we were looking at. And then they cast their votes. And once we've compared their votes with our positions, the scorecard is produced. So it's done on an ongoing basis throughout the legislative session, the 120 days. So it's very interactive. We also encourage them to call us if they think that we've missed something, or if there's a certain amendment that's going to be proposed, or if they think that there's something they can do to make a bill more appealing to us. There is some back and forth conversation, not with all the legislators, but with the ones who are paying attention. So and we occasionally will change our position or moderate our position, but at the end of the day, we support or oppose. In a lot of cases, well, not in a lot, but in some cases, we won't rate a bill if we can't apply principles or if there are competing principles at play. So, we're more eyes on the bills. We think that we're an asset or a resource for some legislators, and we've been told that we are. But at the end of the day, we run the final scorecard after the session, and the grades come out and the chips fall, and we're loved or hated, or somewhere in between. But it is what it is. We think we provide this as a resource to other organizations and other people who might want to run for office if they want to primary a candidate that they think is weak, if they want more information on the Democrats and how they voted, bills that they've sponsored. We've got all that information, and it's all on our website. So again, we're a resource. We don't, none of it's personal. We're just trying to figure out, trying to, just provide more information for whoever wants to use it, however they want to use it. So that's kind of how it works.
Well, I definitely applaud your efforts and the efforts of your team because I can tell you it's a lot of work. This year we did Free State Colorado and the Libertarian Party of Colorado did a weekly live stream. And oh my gosh, the amount of work it takes to look at all the bills every week to decide, how pro-liberty they are, because there is a lot of nuance to some of them. It's not always obvious. You got to do some digging. So I really applaud your efforts. And I got to tell you, your Liberty Scorecard was a great resource for me and the Libertarian Party of Colorado to look at and go through this year and really kind of track some of the legislation. If we had a question on it, they said, "Hey, let's defer to Liberty Scorecard. Let's see what they say. Let's get that information and try and get it out in front of the public because it's such a valuable thing." One of the things I always run into is people just don't pay as much attention at the local level, even though that local level has so much bigger impact on our lives than what's happening in Washington, D.C., or even internationally. So what you're doing is very, very important. And I really encourage people to check out your website to support your work and continue on with your efforts.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're referring to us, and I'm glad that we're helpful to you. Um, yeah, it is a lot of work, but we love what we do. We think Colorado is worth saving, and if there's a part that we can play in that effort, we want to do that. And we also want to recognize, our better legislators and make sure that they're getting support. Obviously, we're all, I believe we're all registered Republicans. I'm not sure on the scorecard, but so we support Republicans, but we want to especially support those who are down there really just, taking the gloves off and fighting really hard for our principles down there because they're the ones that need to be recognized. I was watching your interview with Ian Escalante, and I liked what he said about flying your flag. Even when you don't think you can win, on a certain piece of legislation, you've got to let it known we've got to fly our flag, and sometimes we're just trying to mentor other legislators, hopefully, or maybe teach them about our principles and why they're so important. But if we're not standing up, and if our people aren't standing up and really showing what it means to be a liberty loving Republican down there, then I think we're doomed. But
Oh, definitely. Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, it's unfortunate that there are some Republicans who don't have a really strong backbone when it comes to some of these liberty issues, but definitely got to encourage and support the ones that do, the leaders down there, because they're an inspiration, hopefully, to everybody else. And then they show what's possible. That's what I always think too is, hey, if we had a bunch of liberty minded Republicans in the majority down there, look at what could happen. Look at all this good pro liberty legislation that could get through. So it's a good kind of like flag that people can rally behind and kind of look towards with some optimism, I think, for the future.
yeah, no, I believe that. I really do. As an example, last year, this is 2023, I was just looking at the grades. We only had two A's, two B's, and three C's last year. This year, and we haven't changed our methodology, and the bills don't really change that much. There's as many good as bad. But this year we had three A's, three B's, and seven C's. So I mean, we're having an impact. And I think that there are some liberty curious legislators down there that are paying attention, and they're looking to people like Ken DeGraff and Stephanie Luck and Scott Bottoms and saying, they know something I don't, or maybe, they have more of a backbone, or, more of just more determination. Maybe I should, follow their lead on some of these issues. So, or maybe they're just better versed in liberty principles and the background of liberty and the Constitution and the Declaration and things like that. So yeah, so I do see some movement in the right direction. I mean, that's from seven A's and B's and C's to 13. We've almost doubled the number of legislators who got pretty good scores this year.
Wow. Yeah, and I have to wonder too, with an election year coming up and so many of these legislators seeking either higher office or another term, I wonder how many of them look at this and say, "Hey, I got to get my scores up so that, I can't get beat up during a primary election, so I can't get challenged, and I want to show the voters what I'm standing for as well." So I wonder how much that plays into it.
Well, we can, when we open up the scorecard, when we go into the website, I can show you a couple of examples. But there were definitely some swings, and they were swings from people who are either being primaried or are running for higher office. So they're paying attention because they know their constituents are paying attention.
Well, let's jump into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and load up your website there.
Okay.
Perfect. So this is Liberty Scorecard co.us, a very great resource both during the legislative session and even during elections, like we were talking about. It's really important for people to know who their legislators are, who are their representatives down there in the House and the Senate, and how are they voting. And you make it easy. You provide everybody with the information of some of these big bills, how they voted, yes or no, and then kind of do that ranking. So definitely a great resource. If I was voting in a contested primary, I would definitely want to take a look at Liberty Scorecard co.us to see how that they did, and decide if I'm going to support them again.
Yeah, exactly. It's all there. And obviously it changes. Early in the session, the scores are a little wonky just because they haven't voted on many bills. But obviously, as the session goes on, they're looking at these and thinking, well, maybe I can improve my score. And, in some cases they can. In some cases, there's just too much water under the bridge. But Yeah, you can sort the results by, by name, by, you know, ascending, descending scores, or by, you can look up your districts. Yeah, so it's all there.
Yeah, great resource. I mean, easy for people to navigate. I love that you can find your representative here by typing your full address. So make it really easy for people to find out who they are, and just it's so clear too about what you stand for, what Liberty Scorecard stand for is, like you said before, according to constitutional principles, individual rights, free markets, and limited government. So I already sorted it descending. So we're looking at our Liberty leaders here at the top. So let's dig in here and see who came out on top this year.
Yeah, so, and I do want to preface this by saying that, the scores aren't necessarily apples to, in fact, they're not apples to apples because legislators serve on different committees and some serve on multiple committees. So you'll have, different number of total votes. You'll have votes from, on different bills in committee. What we do is we capture their final committee vote and their final, the floor vote, the third reading vote on the floor. So those are the two data points that we're capturing for each legislator. So their committee votes are going to differ depending on which committees they serve on. But I will tell you, we've got enough data points that I think this is a pretty good picture of how these people are voting and how strong they are on these principles. In fact, we have, I think, on average, about 740 votes per legislator. Some will be a lot more, some will be quite a few, uh, a few less. But on average, 740, that's a lot of data points. So, it's not a perfect measure, but we think it's about as accurate as we can get.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, no, that's a really good point because, yeah, like you said, they're in different committees. Some committees get more bills than others. Some bills don't make it out of committee. So, yeah, really kind of giving that spread. You need a lot of data to really dig in and see that big picture.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, so
So,
our three A's were DeGraff, Ken DeGraff, Scott Bottoms, and Stephanie Luck. Stephanie's had an A for, I don't know, I think three sessions now. Scott's relatively new, Ken's relatively new, but they're just solid Liberty people. So these are our superstars. We call them our Liberty Warriors. And then if you go down to the B's, we've got Ron Weinberg. This is his first time with a really high score. Brandy Bradley and Kevin Van Winkle. We call them our Liberty Defenders, and we award plaques to our A's and our B's. So but really, it's our standards are really high. So to get a A, B, or C, or even in some cases a passing grade is pretty good. The ones we probably ought to be concerned about are the D's and the F's, for sure the F's. But and again, it's these are just measurements. We collect all the data points, print out the results, and let the chips fall. So people will say, well, you gave me a B, and I'll say, no, you earned a B or you earned a D. And we don't give grades, we just you earned them. So it's all based on the data.
nice. I love that distinction there. So yeah, definitely a really good solid group here on this top six for sure. I've had good conversations with Representatives DeGraff and Bottoms and Bradley this year, doing some videos with them, and yeah, just they can speak that they can walk the or they can talk the talk and they can walk the walk for sure about pro liberty messages and pro liberty ideas. So really excited to see it kind of bear out in terms of their voting record here. Really happy to see Representative Weinberg increase as well because I know he was appointed through a vacancy committee. Kind of had a rougher first time, I think, down there. Not getting his feet, still getting his feet wet, in my opinion, at least. And then kind of like solidifying kind of how it works. And okay, here's what's going on. So really good to see that improvement. Uh, Really good to see Representative Van Wink or Senator Van Winkle as well. Excuse me. When I was a legislative aide back in 2017, he was in the same office as me and took his job very seriously. We'd print out ratings from at that time Principles of Liberty and Colorado Union of Taxpayers to look at all the bills every day. So he's very well aware of all these different ratings and how it goes. And he's moving on potentially to higher office or a different office at least, running for commissioner this year down in Douglas County. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, no, he's always been a solid Liberty legislator. So, Brandy kind of brought her grade up since last year, and Ron, I can't remember what he had last year, but yeah, obviously he came up quite a bit. So, Yeah, so it's been interesting to watch the transformation or the improvement in a lot of cases. But then if once you scroll all the way down, some of these folks just, they're going to vote the way they want to vote, and I'm not sure they even look at the scorecard, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, so here in the 70s, we still got, Representative Evans, Representative Wilson, Senator Baisley. Still in the 70s here, Representative Winter, Representative Frizzell, who's running for Senate, Representative Armagost, who's actually my state representative now that I've moved up to Greeley. So good to see him up there. Senator Pelton, Representative Soper. Soper, I know, had a couple controversial votes in the Liberty circles. At least Libertarian Party was beating him up a little bit because he was a vote against civil asset forfeiture. Unfortunately, same with Representative Armagost. Actually, I might be thinking of Armagost and Evans, excuse me there, but I know Soper had that bill to make Cora requests a little bit more difficult for individuals too. So I know he got some criticism for that. So good to see his score overall was pretty good.
Yeah, and again, we don't weight these scores. Some scorecards will weight them based on, if you sponsored a bill, if you were a prime sponsor or just signed on to a bill. We don't do any of that because what we don't want to see are legislators running posturing bills or, we just want to rate them on their voting record. So, yeah, so we don't weight these in any way, shape, or form. So we feel like it's a pretty accurate picture.
Nice. No, that's good. Just the votes only, not necessarily what bills they're pushing through, which have oftentimes can have no chance of passing, really. Sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we're
So
not
rep
an issues organization, so if it's a Second Amendment bill, that's going to be important to RMGO. It's, the fact that they vote one way or the other is the only thing that's important to us, just to collect those data points.
Gotcha. Represent now we're getting down into this the 660s here with Representative Hartsook, Senator Smallwood, Representative Holtorf, Senator Pelton, Senator Lundeen, Representative Lynch, Representative Puglisi, and actually, wow, Representative Bradford down at 60. And then kind of going down here, so it looks like they changed from green to red when they get below that 60 mark, right?
Right. Yeah, it's just pass fail, I guess, if you want to look at it that way.
So we get Senator Liston at 59, Representative Catlin, excuse me, Senator Rich, Senator Will. So yeah, it's interesting to see. Unfortunately, a lot of these Republicans still in that same kind of ballpark of the 50s. Kind of unfortunate there.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I don't know why you can't get better than just a 50% if you're a Republican voting on what should be conservative, obviously conservative issues, but some people struggle with that, I guess.
So moving down the list here, kind of rounding out, looks like pretty much the rest of the Republicans. And then I don't know if it's surprising or not, but Representative Marshall seems to be one of the highest rated Democrats there. And of course, he's in one of the most toughest districts in the state for a Democrat, barely winning by 405 votes, I believe it was 2 years ago. So up for a very, very tough reelection. So it's interesting to see him kind of vote on better on some issues, and then of course, not that great on a lot of others, as demonstrated here by that score.
Yeah, I don't remember what he had last year, but that's the highest rated Democrat score we've seen, I think, since I started doing the Liberty Scorecard 7 years ago. So, yeah, obviously he's running for reelection, so he's got to moderate some of his positions. He actually reached out to us on one bill, and I can't remember the details of it. It had to do with education, and we were just emailing back and forth, and he said, well, as a society we've decided education is really an important thing, and we have to support it. But the bill went far beyond just educating children. It had more to do with some of the woke ideology stuff. And so our response was, yeah, education's important, but this isn't education anymore, this is indoctrination. So then we never got a response. But yeah, so they kind of want to twist some of the principles and try and test us a little bit, and that's fine. We love to dig a little deeper and think a little deeper about these things, but that was pretty obvious that we were never going to switch our position on that bill.
Yeah, and just a little quick look here at Senator Simpson, it looks like the lowest ranked Republican up there. That's really unfortunate. Don't know too much about him, but not much separates him from Bob Marshall, unfortunately, there. So interesting to see for sure. The numbers don't lie, people. That's what's so nice about this scorecard here is you can really look and dig in. And regardless of the rhetoric, regardless of all the campaign mailers or any of the information on social media, you just got to look at the scores, look at their voting record. And I'd love to click in on one of these and take a look and see what that voting record looked like, just to give people an idea here.
Yeah, the funny thing about Cleve Simpson is he represents La Plata County, and we have, oh, I think four or five or six people from down in La Plata County specifically, and they reach out to him all the time and say, "What were you thinking about this bill?" And he'll respond. He's always very responsive, but he's his voting record just isn't that good. So, I guess he's very well liked. People like him. He's a likable person, but his voting record just is not very conservative.
Well, I'd love to take a look just to especially show people too what this voting record looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and click in on him here. So this is great information for people there. You got his phone number and his email. So a really good way to reach out to him, his lifetime score, and then his 2024 score. So actually he came up 4 points there. So
Yeah,
maybe something's getting through to him.
well, not enough.
But I love this. Look how great this is. 2024, you can go back 23, 22, and 21. So really see that voting history over the years. I mean, this is such a great resource. And then looking at some of the bills this year, the position of Liberty Scorecard, and then how that legislator voted on it. So really interesting there. So, this artificial intelligence regulation I know was a controversial bill among the tech industry here. Jared Polis almost apologizing for signing it, talking about the need to change it already. Didn't take long there. So interesting stuff. See if any others stand out here. But yeah, great resource. I mean, this is so nice to be able to click in here and people can actually click into the bill number to get some more information um, on that as well.
It's all right there. And just so you know, we're actually going to work on this over the summer, but we're going to try and present voting records in a spreadsheet form. And that we might actually complete that by next week. But, a way that you could, if you're running a campaign against or for someone, you could download that and it'd be just kind of an at a glance thing as to how they voted. So we're always looking for ways to improve. And I also want to recognize Bill Track 50. We use their software, their bill tracking software. They've been a tremendous resource. I mean, I just can't say enough good things about them. They've, the workings in the background allow us to organize what we do. Everybody has comment columns. All the bill analysts can enter their comments. So when we do our meetings on Sundays, we can, even if you can't be in attendance, you can actually have your input on a bill while we're discussing it. So Bill Track
Oh,
50 has been a tremendous resource for us.
Oh, that's great. Wow. I mean, and just the amount of bills on here, this is incredible to see everything listed. I mean, so many bills, so much information. I mean, what a great resource. Voters, activists, people running for office, get in there and take a look. So really good stuff there. Interesting to see that. Let's continue on. Just look at some of these other scores. Of course, some of the Democrats here at the bottom, unfortunately, how great, Sue, would it be if even all of the Democrats all of a sudden decided to vote on constitutional or liberty principles? How great would that be?
Well, you're living in a dream world, Brandon. But the funny thing, I think the interesting thing to notice here is how tight their scores are for the most part. Bob Marshall was kind of an outlier, but they're always around, 19 to 24. So they really do vote as a block. They've got their marching orders and they follow them. They don't really wander too far off the reservation. So it's pretty striking, I think, that the Republican scores are a little more spread out for better or worse, but the Democrats are voting. I mean, look at that. There's just no spread there. They're told how to vote, and that's what they do.
That is very interesting, and I think that's kind of, indicative of the some of the Democrat mindset versus the Republican mindset in many ways, right? More independent minded, or at least more diverse opinions along on the Republican side, or they're not afraid to disagree with each other as much, maybe. As opposed to the Democrats, like you said, it's lockstep. They got their marching orders. They're part of a team, more cohesive unit. Where the Republicans are not quite that way.
Yeah, yeah. That's exactly right.
So wow, look at this. Let's just keep going to the bottom here. Of course, a lot of big names here that people are probably very familiar with just from being called out. Of course, there's Tim Hernandez facing a tough primary election. We already saw Elizabeth Epps there, but Tim Hernandez kind of towards the bottom here with 18. Yeah, not surprising with any of these names here. There's Lorena Garcia with the same score. Kevin Priola, everybody's least favorite former Republican there with
Yeah,
a score of 18.
he's not even a
But
moderate Democrat.
wow, what a switch there.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think it's interesting too. I mean, the fact that you have people like, I was born and raised in Jefferson County, so Lisa Cutter, Tammy Story, these people that kind of represent relatively more moderate districts overall, I'd say. Tammy Story is in a very tight race as well. She barely won in 2022, and for her to have a worse score than Elizabeth Epps and Tim Hernandez, I mean, that is almost surprising to me, really, to think that she'd be so far apart from them in a way.
Yeah, and maybe it was just the committees that she sat on. I don't know. Like I said, it's not exactly apples to apples, but with the amount of data points that we have, I think it paints a pretty clear picture.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, and down to 15 with Senator Winter there at the bottom. Senator Fields running for county commissioner out there on Arapahoe. So yeah, this is such valuable information here, Sue.
Yeah, thanks. And I think the other thing that's really interesting is, like I said, I send out an email every Monday morning to all the legislators and just saying, we've updated the scorecard, we've rated, all these new bills, take a look. And it's very benign. It's just, we've updated. So if you want to look, go ahead. But the open rate is like 70%, and there's many Democrats opening it as there are Republicans. Why they're curious, I don't know, unless they're searching for an acorn where we might have agreed with them on something. But and to be honest, we took a support position on Democrats sponsored bills, just depending on the bill. Um,
Yeah,
it's not unheard of. We don't single them out. We try really not to pay attention to who's sponsoring. Sometimes you can't help but notice, but we're pretty agnostic as to who's sponsoring. It's really just about applying principles.
nice. Yeah, that's so important. So individuals can sign up here to subscribe. Of course, donate. Definitely encourage people to donate and contribute to this important project. I mean, transparency, understanding what legislators are doing, understanding what your representatives are doing down at the state capitol is so important. Putting that focus, that spotlight on them. So the work you're doing, I hope people do contribute, people subscribe, and help support you in your work.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. We don't endorse candidates. We don't, so we're not really into the fundraising part of it. But we do have costs that we need to cover. Our Bill Track 50 software, which is not insignificant. Our MailChimp, our web people that kind of keep things updated. And so we have some expenses. They're not exorbitant. We try and do it on a shoestring, but if anybody can chip in a few dollars, we always appreciate that.
Nice. Well, Sue, just off the top of your head, were there any themes or a certain kind of broad ideas that you saw kind of reoccurring this year down at the state capitol?
Yeah, a lot of the land use bills. The big one that Polis proposed last year kind of got broken up into bite-sized pieces. So, and they got a lot of that stuff passed that they couldn't get past wholesale last year. So that was unfortunate, and it all kind of got capped off with that Senate Bill 233 at the end of the session. But a lot of attacks on property rights. And full disclosure, I own rental properties, so that's kind of important to me. But they're making it extremely difficult for landlords to stay in business, quite frankly, and to keep their rents low. All these bills that they've passed are making it actually more unaffordable for people to rent homes. You're making it harder for landlords to evict, dragging out the process, defining under which circumstances you can actually evict. And all that does is serve to make you raise your rents because you've got to cover those costs. It's just they're trying to bend the rules of economics and they just don't bend. So it's really unfortunate, but I think when you understand that their end goal really is to control the housing stock, and make no mistake about it, that's what the social democrats want to do. So they want everything, all the housing stock owned by the government. They don't want private landlords or, it's really pretty heinous, but they're actually creating more barricades, more barriers for people to rent homes and for making homes more affordable. So it's quite tragic, really. But we've just got to keep fighting. We need stronger liberty warriors down there, more of them. And we've got to push back on some of these really bad policies. But those are the ones that I notice. Obviously, there are a lot of attacks on oil and gas. So that's going to increase our energy costs. Um, what else? I don't know. You probably have a better perspective on some of this than I do. Like I said, we're so focused on each bill and applying our principles. Sometimes it's really hard for us to get a big overview about what's going on down there because every week we'll have 25, 30 bills and, they're all ugly and but we have to address them by principle, not really by issue. So it's kind of hard for us to get a broad view. The Second Amendment stuff was really tough this session too. So, it's tough road, but we love our state, and that's why we do this. It's not for naught. We've got to keep pushing back, and we've got to really fight to get better people down there.
Oh, definitely. Couldn't agree more. I totally understand exactly what you're saying. There's so many issues, there's so many complex games being played down there to try and unravel it all. It's pretty tough. Earlier, you mentioned the legislators reaching back out to you or kind of coming back and forth. How often would you say that happens where maybe a legislator disagrees with the score or disagrees with the ranking or the rating or maybe their final score at the end of the session? How often do you get that kind of feedback?
Weekly, really. And a lot of times we'll reach out to them if there's a bill that we don't quite understand, or maybe we just don't understand what the origin of it was. We'll reach out to a legislator. But most of the time they'll reach out to us and say, hey, why don't you like my bill? I think it does this. Or what if I ran this kind of an amendment? I mean, it's really very gratifying to get that email or that text message and get to engage with them, and we're always willing to learn. We miss things. We're not perfect. We want to provide the best product that we can. So if there's a way that we can improve what we're doing, we're always happy to do that. And if we're wrong, we admit it, and we try to admit it quickly and correct it. But I will say that most of the time we don't change our position. They just they want to argue, and but and we'll always put it back on monitor. So if we've already taken an opposed position, let's say, and somebody calls me and says, I wish you'd look at this again, and this is why ran this bill, I always put it back on monitor, and then we give it a second look at our next meeting. So that's just the process, and we do that for anybody. But yeah, we get feedback weekly. And a lot of new legislators are reaching out to us, which is really good. We're happy to see that. So, and the House leadership reached out to us. We had a Zoom meeting with them. Um, they just said, please look at our bills, give us a heads up if there's something that's really heinous. And I said,
Yeah.
we'll do the best we can, but here's how we look at bills, and we don't have time really to reach out and say, hey, we're going to oppose your bill. What are you going to? I mean, it's already a bill. It's already been introduced, so there's not much they can do. So, but we're happy to keep the door open. We really are. We really appreciate the feedback. So that's just kind of how the process works.
Nice. Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear some of the newer legislators or newer people in leadership looking for advice or looking for some further information about how they can make their bill a little bit more pro-liberty. So that's really nice to hear.
Right. Yeah. It's incremental. So we do the best we can. We oftentimes will say, yeah, that would be a really good amendment, but we still have to oppose your bill. So,
Wow.
that's
Have you ever gotten a Democrat to reach out to you or talk to you in a way that maybe they thought you misinterpreted their bill or thought you should support it or maybe were upset about the rating?
yeah, actually, it's a kind of a funny story. Brianna Titone reached out. This is a few years ago when she was running her bill about composting remains. I don't know if you remember. I can't remember the. So, if you die and you want to have your remains composted, and then they can, give that bag of mulch to your family, and they can plant a tree in the backyard with your remains. So she ran this bill a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, just making that legal to do. But unfortunately, there wasn't a company in the state that was set up to do that. So the bill didn't go anywhere, but she said, and we didn't actually take a position on it just for that reason, but she sent an email saying, this is kind of a pro liberty kind of thing. I mean, what do you care? If you want to have your remains ground up and made into mulch, you should be able to do that. And I said, you're right. I mean, it was, and she's a Democrat, and so they do come up with decent ideas. That bill eventually did pass a couple of years later, but by then there were companies that actually could provide that service. So it was kind of a moot point at the time, but she was right about the principles.
Hmm. Oh, very interesting. Yeah. Great to see that they're looking at it, looking at your emails, or at least aware of what you're doing and wanting to at least present their side of the argument. And a lot of them, I think they believe they're on the side of liberty. Many times, right? They have just a different interpretation or a different perspective, but a lot of them they think, hey, this is going to increase freedom. Not necessarily freedom of property owners, but freedom of other people who don't necessarily who are able to use the other people's property, maybe. But so kind of a maybe a twisted way to look at it, but definitely I think they see themselves as kind of this pro-liberty people as well. So it's nice, probably refreshing for them to get some information maybe contrary to those ideas.
Yeah, exactly. So, a good idea is a good idea regardless of where it comes from. So we recognize that.
Perfect. Well, Sue, I really appreciate your time, really appreciate your work. Anything else that we should let people know about?
Um, no, we've kind of wrapped it up for this year. We'll start again. Obviously we only are active during the legislative session, which will start again in January. We're always looking for volunteers, people, weirdos who want to read bills. It's a lot of work. We provide all the training. We kind of train you on our principles and how to look at a bill, how to look at the fiscal note, where to look for other information, find out who the lobbyists are, and really do kind of a deep dive. And you don't have to read all 705 every year. Some of us do, most of us don't. So you can just key in on whatever subjects interest you, education, agriculture, whatever. But if any time you can provide and any insight you can provide, we're always welcome. We welcome that with open arms. So if anyone out there is interested in helping us getting involved next year, just reach out to me. If you go to the About Us tab, those emails all come to me, so I will answer you and put you in the queue to do training. It probably won't happen until December, but yeah. So we're done for the season. We think we've done the best we could, and we're always looking for help. So let me know.
Perfect, perfect. I just saw here your on your little news section. It looks like there's a kind of a list of the leaders there. So yeah, encourage people definitely volunteer, get involved. What a great way to have some influence and keep informed, really too, to keep aware of what's going on. It gives you a great reason to analyze some of this legislation, and then sign up for that email list to keep an eye on what's going on and support if you can. So there's the three leaders there. Liberty leaders down there, Representative DeGraff, Representative Bottoms, and Representative Luck. So perfect. Awesome, Sue. Well, I really appreciate you. Hope people can contribute and get involved because it's so important. And I agree with you 100%. Colorado's worth saving, and I think it can happen. It's just going to take more people getting involved and a little bit more organization.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for what you do. Your information is so valuable, and your interviews are always spot on. I learned something from everyone you talk to, so thank you for what you're doing.
I'll appreciate that, Sue. Well, thanks. Appreciate your time and take care. Look forward to talking to you again.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Brandon.